a strong preference for the standard actually to remain principles-based and to avoid introducing prescriptiveness into the requirements. And perhaps there is an opportunity for clarifying some of the issues in certain foundational standards for that matter, like, for example, ISA 315 and 500 or 330 for that matter. They also indicated that perhaps non-authoritative guidance could be an effective way to enhance consistency in practice, to support auditors in applying the standards consistently. And that, with that, Tom, I'll turn the board to the first question, which is really asking for your reflections on what we've heard and what we have presented in our agenda papers as to the feedback received to date. So do you believe that the outreach that we have undertaken, including those that we have in the pipeline, provide an appropriate basis for the board to come up with a standard setting project proposal? Tom?
Okay, thank you. Any input? Okay, that row was, it almost synchronized, huh? Amara.
Thank you, Tom. I'll go straight to the question. If about my reflection on the information gathering activities, I'll be honest, I'll be very surprised with the content of the paper. Another excellent paper to close the week. And also, I'm very happy to see that you covered almost all regions in your information gathering. I went straight to Latin America to see if they had been involved or not. The others are naturally regular contributors to the standard setting process. And I very much agree with almost everything that you captured and you obviously reflected in the paper. So straight to your question, after receiving the paper and meeting with auditors in Brazil, they were extremely happy. The general view is that it's absolutely key to update these two pieces of standard setting literature. And they were also happy to see that the information gathering was not only with auditors, but covered inclusive, including the academics as well. So congratulations, thank you.
Bill?
Bear with me for a moment on this one. It actually covers question 1 and question 2 together, but it's a broad issue I need to raise, and I stress Tom and Billy, I come as friend here, not foe.
That makes me worried, Bill.
Once I mention,
we'll assess where we think you are on that.
I am going to mention sampling, but on the basis that I'm totally confident in the information gathering exercise, and I respect that, and I am not questioning that. But I come from Australia, where the chair of our Auditing Standards Board and also a member of the SAC and also a former senior regulator has been very vocal and very strong on the issue of sampling and the need for it to be. So it would be remiss if I did not raise it at this table. It has been justified that no revisions will be required to sampling, maybe non-authoritative guidance. I just bring it to the table so I can say with some comfort that I've asked other board members if in any of your outreach, any of your standard setting bodies or any other stakeholders you have found any other noise in this area, so that we can somehow reach a decision that I don't really want to keep going over this. That has been mentioned many times in the past, and to say that there may be non-authoritative guidance materials is probably not going to be the answer that this gentleman wants. So if I could just ask other board members if anyone has any particular views on sampling.
Okay, since let's deal with that topic first, and then we'll come back to other topics. What, Nancy?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So I guess it's not as strong as how Bill has framed it, but I was somewhat uncomfortable about just carving it out and leaving it aside without having sort of a visible path forward, because there are some issues that are being raised and there are concerns. So not to suggest that it should sort of slow down the other two standards or thinking that we have to mount a separate project on it, but maybe consideration needs to be given as to where it fits, how we would pick up some of the concerns that were expressed about sampling, because that does resonate with us somewhat as well. So just to speak up to support Bill, not to change the plan, but having a path forward for sampling.
And your 10 raised on this issue, right?
Thank you, Tom. So based on my outreach, Bill, they are very happy that 530 is untouched. So the principles there are believed to be sound. I also made a comment on here. So are we also not doing NAM on 530? Because based on the outreach that we've performed, there seems to be some guidance may very well be useful. I was going to raise it at a later point in time, but that was a question I had as well. That didn't seem entirely in sync, because your conclusion of taking 530 out was a full stop and we're not going to touch it. And I think I'm not sure we need to have a path forward for standard setting. So for me, that route that's final here, but non-authoritative material seems a very valid option based on the outreach that was performed. So that's my perspective. Thank you.
On this topic, any others like specifically want to address sampling? Wendy?
I decided to come in similar to Edo, but not for non-authoritative guidance. I want to say completely in the other direction. Everybody was very content. The sampling standard is fit for purpose for what it's intended to do. Nobody was really looking. I'm not looking for any non-authoritative guidance, but that could be also because the AICPA sampling guide has been used worldwide for very long time as non-authoritative guidance through sampling. So I am very happy not to spend the time at this point, because I don't think it's needed on sampling. Thank you.
Now, hold that thought about the idea of other national standard setters having useful materials that we may consider at some point, because we could come back to that more broadly. On sampling, anyone else? Anyone? So no one else has heard the strong demand to do standard setting. Right. Okay. But what I have heard around the table is it shouldn't be, okay, we should just forget about the topic. Well, generally, when and if there are resources available, we may have an action plan to address some of the feedback we've had through non-authoritative guidance. Now, obviously, then that becomes subject to prioritization and resourcing as well. But I think what I'm hearing is that people thought it was sort of a sharp cliff. Steep cliff we were falling off. Is like, okay, we're not going to do standard setting. We're going to forget about the standard altogether. Keep the point. I have a general point about other standard setters as relates to these topics and others. Okay, Kalina, will you come in on this?
Yes. I think it's appropriate that I come in because we've jumped the section where we discussed the proposal. So there was a comment that we are not doing anything about sampling. I mentioned there was a very strong coordination between the audit evidence risk response team and this team. So the audit evidence and risk response team presented certain proposals yesterday about strengthening some of the requirements on sampling, which was one of the issues that prominently came through. Then that project is also having in their mandate to look at the topic about, what happens in terms of investigating differences, anomalies from the tool and so on. So that's still in that project. That's not forgotten. So I think why I'm making this emphasis is because I think that from this information gathering that this team has done, that has informed the actions that are being taken there to a certain extent. Now, those are broader actions, right? Which came very prominently from the feedback. So just want to kind of put it out there. It's not forgotten. It's very much on our mind. The second point that I wanted to say is, and maybe once, Tom, you feel we are ready to go in the next section, is that it is not that we are suggesting that nothing is done by sampling. I think we have a clear recommendation here in paragraph 20 that actually refers that there may be need for non-authoritative materials. So that is not off the table. It is just in the scope of moving forward the inventory considerations in 501 and moving forward 505, that is a decision that the board can take confidently, hopefully, based on our recommendation today. What happens with audit sampling, it stays in our category 1. And there have been some discussions with stakeholders and obviously some noted areas where guidance could be helpful. So that is not forgotten. Just wanted to set the tone here before we go, and that recommendation sits a little bit later. So Tom, I don't know if you want me to go into that recommendation on the next slide, I could.
I think we should finish this topic, but we certainly finish question 1, and then we'll confirm. But effectively, we've had this debate right now. I think where we are is that we're generally fine with the recommendation of where you're going on sampling, but with some elaboration. You've given a little bit of a story that it's not a forgotten topic. We're actually doing some standard setting actions that touch on sampling, and that we may do authoritative non-authoritative materials when and if we're ready to do based upon the feedback. I think that's fine for now, and we'll save time when we get to it. But let's finish question 1 first. Okay. Now,
Can I just add, I think that's a fair hearing. Thank you for that. And it meets one of my performance objectives, but I will take it back to Australia and work with you in the future as the path forward is clear.
I am well aware of our counterpart in Australia's views on sampling, from which I've heard from day 1 in this role, so I'm not surprised. But it's good that we air them and give it full public hearing to it. Okay, so we're back to question 1. We focused on sampling. Anyone who wants to come in on question 1 is free to do it now. Semi.
Thank you, Tom. And let me start by saying the paper was very well written. So thank you for the team for the good work. The only thing I would like to address is with regard to segment information. Now, say that we are still facing challenges in the region with regard to the quality of the disclosure taking place at the moment. And I'm not sure if the auditors are giving it sufficient attention. And when I read the 501, when I read the application material, it says the auditor responsibility regarding the presentation and disclosure of segment information is in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole. Accordingly, the auditor is not required to perform audit procedures that would be necessary to express an opinion on the segment information presented on a standalone basis. I'm just afraid that the way it's written right now, it might be sending some sort of a signal to the auditor that this is just a disclosure, not to focus much on it for the moment. And I was wondering if we are continuing with our outreach or with our analysis, if we can dive deeper into this area of the paper, which is the segment information. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. Now, just to let you know, first of all, thank you for the patience of our YouTube watchers. We are back live on YouTube, so that's great. So everyone, just note that you're being shown live to the world. Wendy.
Okay, so we're still on question 1 because I feel like we've gone into question 2 a little bit.
No, we're on question 1. It just naturally on the sampling topic, which was appropriate at question 1, we veered into question 2. But question
Okay,
1.
so I'm glad, Bill, you're gonna have your performance that exceeds expectations. Good job. I just want to come in on one. I think what we've done in getting feedback is great so far, and I'm particularly focused on the go forward from a global standard setting perspective, that we have alliance and not differences. And you already said that you're going to speak to some of the standard setters that have gone in that direction, either completed or are in process. So I want to express my support for what's been done and what's going to be done. Thank you.
And that is really one of the things I wanted to highlight here, is that there are other standards in this 500 series that have been passed at the world recently. Like, I almost think that should be a starting point from where for consideration. Like, I think convergence should be a reasonably high priority here. If we could align existing practices through this standard, we'd be in a much better place, and it may allow us to expedite our work process here. So that's something I've heard, and was reiterated almost a little bit in some of the recent remarks that we've seen reported. Kalina, back to you.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, very much on our mind. The point, the jurisdictions, the collaboration with the standard setters will be a big part going forward. So moving on to the development of the project proposal. So just for ease of reference, we are now in agenda item 11A. We will be referring to various sections of the draft project proposal and walking you through actually through the sections as presented in our issues paper, starting in paragraph 15 onwards. So if we move to the next slide, our first section there is determining the in-scope standards for standard setting action. And this is the recommendation that I spoke about previously, which sits in paragraph 20. So based on the comprehensive information gathering and research activities that the team has done, based on that evidence and information that we've gathered, we've come up with 3 recommendations for the board, which we would like to receive input and further guidance on. The first recommendation is that the board proceeds with the standard setting project to modernize the considerations in respect of inventory in 501 and external confirmations in 505. So the document that is presented focuses on only these 2 standards, including conforming and consequential amendments to other standards. The need for this was very clear from the information gathering, and the driver for this is that these standards need to benefit from modernization to remain relevant and fit for purpose in the rapidly evolving business and audit. So it would not include anything else except the considerations in respect to inventory and external confirmations as a standard setting action. Obviously, there are other things in our toolbox that could be done, but the standard setting focuses only on these 2. The second recommendation is that standard setting is not warranted at this time for the other topics in 501, litigation and claims and segment information. So why this is the case is because we did note some concerns, which are, however, limited. We asked the question very explicitly in all of our discussions, and we also looked at literature and other areas. It is because there were some issues, but they were not widespread or systematic. So there may be some pockets where these issues are happening, but it's not a global relevance issue at this point that the board would, that we would suggest to the board to take a standard setting action. There was also that sometimes the issues that were noted were driven by environmental factors or structural preferences. For example, we heard, why does 501 exist as a standalone standard? Why don't you reallocate the requirements to other places? That is a structural preference, which is obviously a preference that we've heard, but it is not driven by the driver, which is technological modernization and so on. Okay. same issue on this side. This one. Okay, and the last recommendation is about the one we previously had a discussion. It is about audit sampling. What staff is recommending here is that standard setting action is not currently justified, but there is a need for ongoing monitoring and stakeholder engagement in this space. So there is a recommendation there to not just park it. There is more to be done, but at this point in time, we don't have enough to recommend to this board based on what we've heard, that there is a clear standard setting path. Why this is because we consistently heard across all stakeholder groups. So here I don't want to be selective. It was one group. It was a consistent message that we heard that the principles in 530 remain sound and that maybe non-authoritative materials should be explored if there was a need to address some of the challenges that are there in terms of applying the standards appropriately. Very often it came up that these are performance challenges rather than being challenges with standards. There was also a strong caution, what more can you do in a principle-based standard? We don't want the standard to become a specific methodology or a detailed guidance. So there is also that caution, which equally came through from a broad range of stakeholder groups, not just from one individual group. On that basis, we do have a process for ongoing monitoring of global developments. We are just going now into our next strategy period, which is a great source where we can further test certain topics and see how the issues evolve and what else may need it to be done. So that is also recognized. Very much this comes to the point raised previously. We are not forgetting about this topic. We are just not suggesting standard setting action at this time. And I did mention previously, we have an active standard setting project where the foundational elements on, when the auditor decides to go into sampling are there. Some of the work that the Audit Evidence and Risk Response project is doing directly responds to some of the feedback we received. With that, Tom, if we move to the next slide, it's a question which has two questions, and question 2 has 3 parts because we're asking specifically input on our recommendation. Part A is we are asking the board for their views on our recommendation to pursue a standard setting project with a scope that is related to inventory and external confirmations by revising 501 section on inventory and 505 as a standard. Then B, that we are not suggesting a standard setting for the other topics in 501, litigation and claims and segment information. And C, that 530 will not be in scope for standard project. And then the other all capture question is there anything else that we need to consider in determining the in-scope standards? Thank you.
Let's see if I could isolate some issues here. Why don't we deal with each topic one by one and ask if people raise their hand if they either object to the recommendation or have some color on the specific recommendation here. So we'll deal with A first. People are supportive of the recommendation in A. Okay. Let's go. You're not supportive of on A. Do you not agree with the recommendation in A? Okay. Observe away.
I don't necessarily disagree entirely, but I am very focused on external confirmation. So if we were to prioritize, if we had resource issues or needed to prioritize, I would say external confirmations is a priority number one. And so that's why I'm struggling with whether or not we have to link these projects necessarily together and have them move at the same speed. For 501, I don't know that we need to have a standard setting project for inventory. We can have non-authoritative guidance. And
But then you're not agreeing with the recommendation, then.
Okay.
Yeah, so, okay, but by the rest of the room, though, supports the idea of standard setting on 501 for inventories. Okay. We're gonna go next.
Someone take that card away.
Josephine, in her last act as vice chair, has ordered a card to be confiscated from the table.
Thanks for that on the public record.
Yes.
You made a comment on the public.
Well, it was on the, no, she just chose not to put her mic on at this point. It doesn't mean that I'm not gonna repeat it, Josephine. You should know this by now. How long have you been my vice chair? Okay. So B, that standard set is not warranted in 501 for the topics of litigation and claims and segment information. Okay, Wendy.
I agree, it is not warranted, but I also wonder if we could put in a project category for litigation claims to move to another standard, like 330 maybe, is it, I don't remember which number. And then segment information, I know Sammy made a comment earlier, I don't believe it belongs in the auditing standards. It seems to be the only accounting standard that finds its way specifically into the auditing standard, and I'm not really clear on why.
Josephine's going to reiterate her position on the card right now.
No, actually, I was going to say I have sympathy for this. When we talked about this, when I did my outreach, there was a thought that actually, to Wendy's point, litigation and claims, segment information, they're all really all covered in 315 and 330 now. So when we do our PIR for 315, it might be just worth including a question along the lines of, could you see a possibility of just shifting those aspects of 501 into the appropriate places in the standard? You know, particularly to Sammy's point earlier about segment information, and it is a disclosure, and it's so essentially it is covered. It's either a COTB or a SCOTB, and it is covered, and there is a response to it. So just a thought for the post-implementation review when you're building the questions for that. Thank you.
Okay, so Wendy, you were nodding your head. You would be content with that approach? Okay, you've gotten the card back on probation from Josephine. Well, we'll take it under advisement going forward. So, okay, people are fine with B. Now C, that 530 will not be in scope for purposes of standard setting, not with our conversation earlier that we leave some description of what we're doing related to sampling in our other work and the possibility for other non-authoritative guidance. People are in support of Adam?
I do have a question on that. Because I think that the outreach gave some valuable information. So this question as phrased here, it's not in scope for this project. So this team is not going to deal with it. That's how I read it. So who else may pick up non-authoritative guidance in this area? Because it's also not part of the section that deals with non-authoritative material in the project proposal. So at the moment it's entirely out as far, and notwithstanding the comments that Kalina made, but so far the board's not committing to anything in this area. And that's just a question I want to raise, and how I should interpret this question, because I agree that it's not in scope for standard setting. I'm not convinced it should be out of scope entirely, and I think I'm confused at where it's going to sit. Is it going to sit in our A bucket in the funnel, or? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ado. Yeah, I think you read the papers in the right way. So the idea was that if we are scoping this standard setting project, we want to focus on 501 and 505 and get that done. So you're quite right. It will not be this team that will do it. Who will do it? Well, based on the previous discussion, I've made notes here that I don't know because I need resources for that. But you're quite right, it's not part of this project.
Nancy?
So maybe I overinterpreted what Kalina explained earlier. I thought she said under the AERR project, there would be room to look at non-authoritative material to address some of the issues here. So maybe I overinterpreted.
I don't think that's what she said. I believe, if I interpret what she said, is that within the AERR project, they are dealing with requirements and application material that have a bearing on sampling, but that there's not a specific approach to taking in the feedback necessarily that we received in this outreach to address that within the 500 project.
Then I'm totally with Ado, and hopefully Willie can make sure that that doesn't get lost in terms of issues to address.
You know, I think this is a little bit semantics about what's in this project, what's not. Like, as a maybe non-accountant, I think it definitely is on our radar screen still. We're not forgetting about it. It's the question of how we prioritize this relative to other work. I would not want to think that it's deep in our piles of things to do going forward. Like, it's a question of how we allocate resources. It may be the people on this team, but it's like this team needs to figure out what work they need to get done from now to along our project timeline. And to some extent, it's a little bit of a deprioritization of maybe even non-application material within the scope, and we need to hold them accountable for things, but it's not like it's going away, and there should be some thoughtful process for how we deal with the materials. Like, we just don't know yet. Like, it's asking about how we resource something. You know.
I think this is a question for you, Billy, because I have sympathy with what Edo asked. And so if we pull it out of this project and it goes into this other bucket, whatever you called the bucket, Kalina, technically, I don't remember, in the funnel, what else is in that funnel? Does this end up at the top of the funnel? Or is this mixed in with a whole bunch of other things that we might get to whenever we get to? I'm just, that's where the clarity is missing.
Okay, so Wendy, maybe to answer that another way. My staff resources are fully used on what we have now through to 2027. So that's where we are. So remember, if we bucket it into this project, whether it's, well, we've already said it's not standard setting, but if we say, well, while you're doing the 501 and 505 standards, also work on the 530 stuff, we can do that, but then the timeline is going to kick out.
No, I was only looking for clarity. It's, it's not clear where it goes when we take it out of here, that's all. And so is it with the other 500? Is it with 530? Is it with potentially other 500 projects? I don't have the work program in front of me as to what else was on the horizon.
Look, in some of this stuff, we need to figure out whether maybe we could get additional resources to help us do it. Like, as you pointed out, other national standard setters have opined on this topic. We're talking about different options within our fellow program too, that maybe there's useful resources to be brought. I think we need to be, what I'm hearing is that we should not forget about this and just put it in the pile with everything else. But at some point, we have to give this team instructions on what their priorities are to meet deadlines. If we add this to the mix, then it's just note it's like the equivalent of running another project concurrently with it. And I think what they're asking for is, based upon the decision not to do formal standard setting on 530, could they have the relief to focus on the other aspects while we figure out an approach to deal with the 530 guidance? And it would be out of scope for the project proposal.
Yes, thank you, Tom. And I'm entirely on board with that. So it's out of the scope for this team. I do think that the outreach that we have performed gives this non-authoritative material for sampling a little bit of an asterisk, that we keep it front of mind, and that it sits a little bit higher in the list of priorities. That's the only thing I think I'm asking for, is that we don't lose track of that. And again, and particularly in light of cooperation with other standard setters and other guidance that may be out there, see what we can leverage. Thank you.
Greg?
Thanks, Tom. I think where we're getting to is we're sort of earmarking this for the next strategy work plan discussion, aren't we? Or earlier if resources allow. But it feels like if we don't get to this, then this is something we want to prioritise in the next strategy work plan. Thanks.
Yeah, like it's not clear to me that we can identify some resources here, but we work with what we have today, and we may be able to get this done well in advance of 27. On what we have today, we're just trying to figure out what we prioritize. I think we could, Billy and I will explore options as we always do on different topics. And if we could identify resources that this wouldn't be a full-time job, I don't think 100% FTE to do it. We should see whether we could get some resources to help us here. Note to all of our JSS friends and others who are following us too, is like they have good ideas on how to address it, then please come forward. But I think where we are right now is support of these recommendations, a recognition that as it relates to 530, we should not act as if we're dropping this. We're doing some stuff within audit evidence risk response that is responsive to some of the issues here. There may be a need to do some non-authoritative materials based upon the feedback. We've completely see how quickly we can accelerate some of that process when and if resources are available. And as it relates to the two other elements of 501, we could ask questions of the post-implementation review on 315. Right? So that summarizes it. People are nodding. Do I got this correct? Okay. That really leaves us now with question 3 on whether there are any other matters that should be considered in relation in the in-scope standards or standard setting action. Anyone want to come in here? Great. Okay. So we can move forward.
Thank you, Tom. So the next section is about the key issues. We are not exactly following here the order of the document in agenda item 11A, but we thought it's important that because we did discuss the issues in June, there has been some evolution in the issues. So we thought it's important we discuss this topic first. And references there are to the draft project proposal, section 5, paragraphs 17 and 19. Which basically outline the issues that the project will address. Many of the issues are actually all of the issues for inventory and external confirmations that were discussed in June have been refined and included in that list. But there was 2 additional issues that came up that staff has picked up. The first issue relates to aligning with concepts for the identification, assessment, and responding to risk of material misstatement. So this was a strong message that came through in terms of the standards not fully aligning with the evolution in some of our other standards, particularly 315, 500, 330. So that is a topic that we have brought in that this project will address. Even further, we also discussed some proposals with the board, changes to 330 going forward. So there's opportunities to think about what can be done in these standards in that respect. So that is a new issue. The other new issue is the overarching issue about professional skepticism. Both inventory and external confirmations are areas where reinforcing professional skepticism came up quite often in the discussions we have. These are 2 areas that are historically linked to scandals, like, for example, bank fraud, and then for inventory, overstated assets, misappropriation, and so on. So professional skepticism has been added as a separate component that comes through many of the revisions that are coming through in these standards. And with that, we do have a question there for the board, which is question 4. And the board is asked for their views on whether the key issues that are identified are complete and appropriately reflect the issues that should be addressed in the project proposal with a reference to agenda item 11A, section 5. Thank you.
Okay, question 4. Edo.
Thank you, Colina. I entirely agree with the two issues added. I think the first one you mentioned, the alignment with concepts for identification, assessment, responding to risk of material statement, is really important. There's two questions I have about it. One of them is that I think it's of such importance that it probably should feature in the objectives, because that's what you also have done with professional skepticism. And then what may be perceived differently, and it's the way how you read, because you link to 330 extent, but it needs to link to 330 that is currently in revision. And that's not clear how that's, because if we align this with extent 330, that's not going to work. Not enough. So we want this all to be aligned in line with where the new 330 is heading as well. And that's so you may want to spend some words on it to clarify, because it will require further coordination and yada, yada, yada. Thank you.
Josephine?
Thank you. Exactly the same point. Really, I'm happy with the two new issues. Also believe that should be part of the objectives. In hindsight, I'm not sure why we didn't think of that before. And then just a very minor comment that came through on paragraph 18K. It was not really understandable what we meant by inconsistency across jurisdictions and prevailing approaches. So maybe we just need to change that to inconsistency in the practical application. Thank you, but that's just a minor point. Thank you.
Christel?
Thank you. I agree with complete and appropriate. With respect to inventory movements between interim and period end dates, I would note that this may be primarily a performance issue rather than a matter requiring changes to the standards. Roll forward considerations are also not exclusive to inventory. So I suggest keeping any actions in this area conditional.
Thank you, Tom. I have one question and one suggestion. The question is that because the current 501 is primarily focusing on the physical inventory or the existence primarily. Of course, a little bit about the condition and the rights and the obligation, but that covers only a certain assertions of inventory. So I just want to confirm that by revising this standard, we are still addressing some of the assertions, but not all the assertions, because apparently costing evaluation is not in scope. That's one question. And the second is a recommendation. I agree with all the issues put here, especially the one on alignment with risk assessment, identification, assessment, and responding. And to build on that, I would also like to raise the importance to consider controls in working on inventories. Not only the daily control on inventory transactions, including cycle count, which is often considered control, but also actually when we perform observation of physical inventory, there is an element of observing the entity's controls on their counting process and the procedures. And also sometimes the controls at the service provider in the case of inventory in the custody of third parties, those third parties are service providers. All those things would have an impact on the subsequent substantive procedure, whether it's observation or inspection or confirmation. So I think it's important to have this linkage between risk and control and the substantive procedures we perform on inventory. Thank you.
Yoshihiro?
Thank you, Tom. Confirmation procedures are often insufficient to provide valid audit evidence for high-risk transactions, such as collusion or round tripping. However, 505 paragraph A20 cites the risk of collusion involving management as an example, where a positive confirmation request is necessary to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Such wording may lead auditors to believe that the fraud risk has been adequately addressed simply by obtaining a confirmation request. This may undermine the exercise of professional skepticism. We expect that the exercise of professional skepticism would be promoted by providing additional guidance that illustrated cases where external confirmation procedures cannot provide sufficient appropriate audit evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
Just a quick point on professional skepticism. We have a consultation group, which I'm a member of, and so many times the suggestion comes up to emphasize professional skepticism in some way. I just wanted to make it clear that, and tell me if I'm wrong, but professional skepticism isn't something you do at different points of time along the journey. It's the entire journey. It is always existing. So to put an extra sentence in to say, hey, by the way, don't forget to be skeptical here is not helpful. It's actually harmful. So just wanted to make that clarity.
Okay. Anyone else? Back to you guys.
Yes, thank you so much for those comments. Edo, Josephine, yes, we can look at the objectives, bring that to light. It is an important component, fully agree. It's just that we need to find the right words. So if you have suggestions for those, we have a question on the objectives, happy to look at those. Yes, very much take your point. 330 is currently under revision. We should probably make the point that we will be following what the revisions, not extent, but where it lands. Interestingly, just wanted to say that it did come up with our discussions with Greg and Josephine previously. So irrespective of paragraph 18, this decision for inventory to be material was a deliberate one at the Clarity Project, maybe a longer time ago, when the board took out all those requirements but they kept it here. So we'll have to look at it irrespectively, and it will be part of something that the board will consider and decide. Just wanted to mention that it's irrespective of paragraph 18, this one. And then Christelle, I think the way, how we've crafted them for this performance issue, but fully agree, we are going to be keeping this, refreshing the principles and strengthening them, but not in the sense of specific performance issues. So fully take on board your comment about being mindful in the actions. Too early now, but we can look at the wording there. If we are suggesting something else, then we'll soften that. And then, yes, there is no, at the moment, we are focusing on the current 501. There is no intention to extend what 501 addresses. When we're talking about alignment, it's probably more in terms of how does the standard now fit with 315, 330? Is there anything there that could be clarified, aligned, but not really extended at this point in terms of beyond what the objectives are? Maybe the objectives will be under consideration, but not in the extent that it's still about those aspects of inventory that the standard is addressing. Our information gathering is based on the existing standard. So we haven't heard anything about extending that, maybe some requests, but they were very isolated. They're not part of the issues we're addressing. And then, yes, And yeah, no, your caution about professional skepticism noted, but I think, you know, we can probably in these standards be a little bit more integrated in the way we address that concept, because it's really pervasive. When we looked where it links, it's across several requirements throughout the standard, especially in 501. Thank you. So, Tom, now handing over to Henken for the other pieces of agenda item 11A.
Okay, thank you, Kalina. We will now go through the three next sections of the project proposal that covers the introduction, the project objectives, and the stakeholders impacted. So in the introduction section, we've set up the rationale for revising ISA 501 and 505, reflecting feedback from prior exposure drafts, consultation papers, and of course, the IAASB technology position. And then it built on other initiatives to enhance the audit evidence standards in areas of significant public interest. And obviously, it's informed by the extensive information gathering activities that we have now summarized in the appendix to the draft project proposal. I've heard from a few board members on your initial comments on the project objectives. I think one point of clarification that I'd like to make is that, are you envisioning a separate project objective that focuses on that, or embedded into one, I guess the second one? And we can take that offline. And then section 4 of the project proposal then now details the stakeholders most impacted and how their needs are being addressed. So with that, Tom, I'll turn it over to you for the question for the board.
Okay. Any comments? Ada?
Just to address the question that Henken asked. So I think it's rather than messing up your entire project proposal, we can frame it as an overarching objective rather than to make it a separate objective that needs to be addressed. That I think that would be could be a practical solution to this.
Any other comments? People are supportive? Okay. Let's move onwards.
So the next section is the scope of the project. So section 6 of the project proposal details the scope of the project and lay out the proposed standard setting action to each key issues. So they are summarized in the table in agenda item 11A. So if I quickly summarize, so for 501, the proposed action includes, so A1, enhancing application material to reflect technology-enabled inventory system. A2, clarifications at inventory counting. B1, aligning with risk-based concepts. B2, strengthening requirements and application material on inventory in their custody or control of a third party. B3, strengthening or clarifying requirements or application material on the accuracy and completeness of the entity's final inventory record and change in inventory. And B4, enhance requirements or application material to reinforce the exercise of professional skepticism. Then for 505, we have A3, updating the definition and requirements or application material to address the implication of using technology and third-party intermediaries in external confirmation. B5, reconsidering the use of negative confirmation. B6, enhancing objective requirement or application material to clarify that external confirmation may not provide sufficient appropriate audit evidence for all or certain assertion. B7, reinforcing the expectation around response reliability. B8, enhancing and clarifying requirements or application material to strengthen the auditor's consideration about the need to perform external confirmation procedure. B9, strengthening requirements and application material on non-response and exception. And B10, on the exercise of professional skepticism. And then we have question 6 to ask for your views on those proposed action. Back to you, Tom.
Okay, question 6. Josephine?
Thanks, team. So just some clarity needed around our references to enhance or clarify requirements, enhance requirements or application, strengthen or clarify. You know, maybe we just need to pick one phraseology and go with it throughout, because it implies there's something different that we want to do, and I'm not quite sure that's the case. And then that was the only thing on that. Thank you very much.
Edo?
Thank you. I had the same comment as Josephine, and will send you the offline comments as well. This comment that first came up in reading the issues paper when you use the word consideration. So in the table, in scope of the project, it says considerations in respect of inventory. But it's not, I don't think it's considerations. We're talking about requirements and application material that we are considering. It's not the considerations itself. So you are laughing, so you must have had a discussion beforehand on this. So great. So if you can look at the language, because that's not coming through clear. Let me scroll to the document. Yes, so on A1, when it says in doing so, also considering emphasizing auditors' responsibilities in evaluating the design, implementation, and operating effectiveness of inventory-related controls. Maybe we'll have a look at the language, because it sounds a bit like a mandatory requirement to test operating effectiveness. And I don't think that's the intention. And I think that is, and I've made the comment about how it ties into ISA 330, but this was in connection with ISA 330 being meant in B1, but we'll fix that. Thank you.
Robert?
I have a small comment with respect to B2. In the first bullet, you say, in doing so, consider whether sole reliance on third-party confirmation is appropriate. So this implies everything. I would suggest to phrase it differently. Clarify under which circumstances sole reliance on third-party confirmation may not be appropriate. So do it the other way around. You might come to the same conclusion. And then on B8, it's a consideration about need to perform external confirmation. The question is the linkage to ISA 330. Is it clearly an issue for ISA 505 or rather for ISA 330? Thank you.
Wendy?
Thank you, Tom. Just a couple of additional points. I agree with the ones that have already been made. For inventory in B2, I just wanted to understand the words "and condition of inventory," because I always thought we were dealing with the existence assertion as it relates to inventory under the custody and control of third parties in 501. That doesn't mean that we don't care about the condition at a third party. The other observation I have for 501 is, could we specifically add something in on cycle counts? I think this has been challenged by some of the inspectors in the past on how you rely on cycle counts and things of that nature. I'm talking about application material. And so whether or not we should specifically put that in. I think we talked about the third parties. And then in confirmations, I just want a broad recommendation, and I don't know which B1, 2, 3 it fits into. Consider consistency of the use of the word exception throughout the ISAs, not just here, but there does seem to be some inconsistency on how that's applied. And also some more on non-responses, because if you have a partial response, what do you do with that? So just some considerations there on the actions. Thanks.
Edo, did you want to come back in? So just reflecting on some of our conversations, I'm obviously super supportive of what's here. Just about our philosophy, sometimes we talk about requirements or not, or application guidance. I think that's the art of standard setting. Like, we will have to get the right balance between requirements and application material. I'm sure this is something the PIOB will be observing, but we're not always defaulting to application materials. Things that have to be in requirements, we'll put in requirements. Things that need to be in application should be an application material, will be an application material according to how we normally make those distinctions. So I think it's just something that we'll keep top of mind, and I'm reflecting on some of the conversations we've had with our stakeholders throughout.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So it's just a little slow trying to catch up. I'm not sure. I was trying to go through the document and I didn't see it jumping out at me. But multi-location, if we have to do counts in multi-location, they're fine. If not, maybe think about that. And the other aspect is tying it with 600. Thanks.
Okay, back to the team.
A quick response to some of some of the comments that were raised on cycle counts. I think we did have a reference to that within our proposed actions in B3. Appreciate all the comments on consistency in the use of the terms within the proposed actions. And for multi-location audits and the tie-up to 600, are you thinking of having something on application material, Nancy, right?
Don't have a definitive position, but it's something that needs to be considered. You can take a look at that and see where it would best fit.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so next section of the project proposal. So we are not talking about the project timeline, priorities, resource, output, and inputs. So the project is expected to be completed over approximately 2 years, with key milestone being like 2026 development and approval of the exposure draft, 2027 public consultation and responses, and early 2028 final approval. So the expected outputs include revised ISA 501 and ISA 505, conforming amendment to other ISAs, and supporting non-optative guidance as needed. So we have questions for the board to ask their view on those section of the project proposal, and then catch-all question on question 8, whether there's any matters that we should consider. Tom, over to you.
And Billy, if I'm right here, remember the timeline's been calibrated in the context of other ongoing projects, and that any desire to change it has an impact on the way we consult on other ongoing projects. So, is that right? Okay, great. Any comments on the remaining questions? Nancy?
Yeah, so I support what's there. I just have a question about the final paragraph 34, when we talk about PIR. Just maybe it's more of a question than asking for a change. Just wondering that why do we not put in the notion about, generally speaking, we would consider a PIR typically 3 to 5 years after the standard come into play. So just wonder why you do not say that in this particular case, because I think I saw that in the other one, 540, I guess.
Yes, so Nancy, I guess in terms of how we approach our post-implementation reviews, I think when the board discussed some of the changes to the due process, so we don't have like it's the post-implementation reviews can be in many forms in many ways. Significant standard setting projects, for example, like 540, 315, I don't know, quality management, those are significant. So those are 2 to 3 years after their implementation. It's usual for the board to start thinking about that. But when a standard setting project is not significant, there's other ways that the post-implementation review can be monitored. For example, through the strategy and work plan, through interactions with JSS, through many other mechanisms, which are not as formal, that would go through a process as per the framework. So on that basis, we do not always put something explicit in our project proposals when it comes to non-significant standard setting project. We're more explicit when it comes to those others.
The reason I raised that is because we're talking about considering whether you would do one, right? It's not committing to doing one 3 to 5 years. So if we have a general approach of saying that some of the more, important fundamental changes that needs to be looked at sooner or because of market condition needs to be reviewed sooner, those are consideration. And you may want to do it sooner or later, depending on what the rationale might be. So here is just basically saying that, like any other standard changes, we would consider a PIR and giving people a sense as to what it might look like if we have that general view as part of our due process. That's all, but it's not a big point.
So in reality, actually, I think the sentence 34, the paragraph 34 would work a little bit better if we sort of flip the concepts, that we monitor the implementation of our standards through a variety of ways. 3 years, 3 to 5 years after the implementation standard, we will make a determination. But I think the big point is that we don't put a standard out in the market and like hope it works and leave it alone. We actively monitor. So if we could flip the two concepts on head and then make a determination about the need for a formal post, it's the question about formal post-implementation review. So we let us work through that, and I think the team's nodding, and I think that was the intent of the paragraph anyway. It's the lead is that we're monitoring it. Whether we're doing a formal post-implementation review is another question.
Very comfortable with that.
Team, are you comfortable with that? Yeah. Great. Any other comments on questions 7 and 8? Okay. Should we move forward?
Yes. This is our last slide. Just wanted to give the board a little bit of sense what's next. So thank you very much for your inputs, your feedback. We do welcome your offline comments. Please do send those that you have. We're happy to look at them while we are refining the proposal. So what will happen next is we continue with our ongoing coordination with other projects. We have a touch point with our colleagues from IAASB. We are going to share the draft project proposal with them and ask them for input, anything from their perspective that they would like to share. So that will also be considered in the next up.
Okay, for the people who are watching us online, we have a fire drill here. So we'll be back shortly. Okay, could we get back seated, please? You guys were almost to the finish line, huh? Final lap. Okay. Back to the team to finish up. Sorry, the fire drill is over. We're back.
Yes, thank you, Tom. So just to wrap up this up, so what happens next is we consider the feedback based on your comments in plenary and anything offline that the team receives. We have also continuing our coordination with other teams, with the technology consultation group, and also with IAASB. We are going to initiate a process of coordination. They will to input on the project proposal. In the meantime, we will also continue our stakeholder outreach, and very importantly, Tom, you brought it up. We're using the word here, monitoring of jurisdictional developments is very much going to be engaging with jurisdictions in terms of some of the ones that have gone ahead and getting some input there. And in March, we are hoping to have approval of the project proposal, and just to thank the board for the input and the guidance today.
Thank you to the team. Before we wrap this topic up, Philippe, any observations of the PIOB?
Thank you, Tom. No, the PIOB has been supportive of this approach. Only one point of attention was related to the inclusion in the stakeholder engagement of the preparers and users, because it was not obvious that this population was included, in the targeted outreach. So just we pay attention to this point, but for the rest, we are satisfied by the approach regarding the public interest issues included in this revision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So well done, team. Thank you for advancing this. And we look forward to the approval of the project proposal at our March meeting. So with that, even though we had a mini break just a moment ago, we're going to take a break right now. What I suggest is that we return 10 minutes after the hour. So you still get half an hour. It will gain 20 minutes on the schedule today. When we return, we'll deal with ISA for LCE. So back in 30 minutes. Thank you. Okay, can we all get seated, please? Okay, we're gonna turn to agenda item 12, ISA for LC illustrative drafting. And I see the team is seated at the table, and so I handed it over to Isabel.
Thank you, Tom. So this session, although we did talk about LC earlier this week, this session is a bit different. We are actually talking about developing the revisions to the ISA for LC. So this quarter, when we had a discussion, in September, we had a discussion on the approach, the project proposal, and once we kind of revised what we wanted to show you that we did earlier this week, the team went on and we actually started the process and started to do the work. So we had the steps that we wanted to go through, which are highlighted in the approach. But just like when we always, in anything in life, when you start doing the work, doing the task, there were some questions that came up. One of them was, okay, how we are going to present that information so that it's digestible, that provides the right information for insightful discussions at the board, and that you have all the information you need, that it was not overloaded. So how to have that right balance. So what we thought that we could do this December is to provide you some sort of a sample, how we want to approach things. So we selected a few parts that we wanted to present to you, and go through the process. And I forgot to advance the slide. So the purpose of this session is really to discuss the process, discuss the information we have provided you. Is it the right thing? Do you need more? Do you need less? And we thought also that to have that good feedback, we wanted to present to you the whole process for certain parts. So really going from A to Z, going from the input or analysis, and then the outcomes of the proposed revisions for those parts. So given that we have provided you some of the proposed revision, we are also wanted to discuss those drafting. So just to go a little bit more on the process. So our starting point was the appendices of the project proposal. We have all the issues that were included in the ISA projects that were in scope. So we started with those issues, and the first step of the approach is really to look at which of those issues are relevant. This is what we've done in the first or agenda item 12A. So having a list of all the issues and going through them and saying, are they relevant or not? And explaining the rationale for our conclusion on that. I just want to mention here, the SMPAG letter did have a comment on this particular agenda item, asking to be a bit more transparent. They weren't sure of a certain of the rationale. So that's something that we will consider as well going forward. Then once we have identified those relevant issues, that's kind of the starting point for our next agenda paper, which is agenda item 12B. And that goes through our analysis of, okay, for those issues, what was done in the ISA? And then how are we going to bring the proportionality and all the design principle of the ISA for LC into to those revisions? So this is our analysis. We presented it in a table. We went back and forth on a few different options if we should do a table or present it differently, but we thought that a table would provide a clear link between what was done in the ISA and then how we're proposing to address it in the ISA for LC. And then agenda item 12C is the actual outcome and what we're proposing for the revisions to the ISA for LC. So you see the actual drafting. So we understand that there is a few papers that go through but it's important that we look at them all together because they really flow from one paper to the other. So we're hoping that that was clear, but wanted to ask the question of you that the structure is appropriate, if it has the right information for the board discussion going forward.
Maybe just one thing to add before we go to the board, and maybe especially for the board members that weren't around in December 23, when we approved the ISA for LCE. During that project, there was a lot of focus on what Isabel explained in terms of you saying you're using the concepts and requirements of the ISAs. And there was this constant call for a mapping that people wanted to understand. So what there's the ISAs, what happened to it, and how did you get to the ISA for LCE? And so there's almost a necessity for the process that Isabel has described in terms of keeping track. And as Isabel said, we really looked at a few alternatives and found, well, unless we can make something on paper three-dimensional, this is almost the only way that you can do this. So I just wanted to add that, Tom, thanks.
So would it be fair to say on this question, though, we're not asking people for their specific views on topics here, but it's really more about the process followed?
Yes, thank you, Tom. Yeah, what is important for me is some sort of an audit trail. How do you come from the changes in the standards to ISO for LCE? And I do think this makes it very clear. I think it's a clear process. It's first determining whether it's relevant or not, singling out those requirements that have been changed in the standards, and then getting towards a language that captures the very same meaning into the ISA for LCE. So I thought this is very clear, comfortable with this. Thank you.
Nancy?
Yeah, I just want to support what Ado just said. So in addition to the actual process itself, the relevance, and then the implications and so on and so forth, the way you package it, I think try to minimize the amount of turns and the amount of papers. I think that makes sense to me as well. So I'm supportive of both the process and the structure of how you're going to present the papers.
Anyone else? So I see you support the structured process as proposed. Okay, great. Let's move on to the next topic.
So the next topic is the actual drafting. So as Isabel just highlighted, the main purpose of today was really to test it out, but if you're okay with the process. So we therefore purposely selected some parts that are less complex. So we selected the authority and then part 1 to 4. You might wonder there are no changes to part 2 and 4 because based on what we saw in the fraud and going concern and with PI and exports projects, we don't see anything that would change in those parts. So what we did, so as Isabel explained as well, so we went through the steps. We considered first the relevance of the issue. Then we developed a proportionate solution. The one thing in developing that proportionate solution, we also looked at the design principles as they are included in the approach statement. One thing to highlight there is that some are more applicable or more relevant, I guess, than others. So, for example, proportionality is, I think, is the main one that we've been using, bringing it in proportionate. But some others, like for example, there's one of them is the intuitive structure of the ISO for LCE. That is something that has been established at the beginning of the project, and is for this maintenance is of less relevance. So there's a bit of background on that. On this slide, you see the areas where we made changes, maybe on a high level to walk you through them. So in the authority, we adopted the definition of a publicly traded entity, including as well some EEM there. In part 1, we brought quite a few, there were quite a few changes in this part because it reflects the changes that were made to the introduction of ISO 240, and as like all of you remember, there were quite a few changes made to this introduction in the process of revising the standard. So we clarified, among other things, the auditor's responsibilities relating to fraud, the inherent limitations of an audit, but also the relationship between fraud and non-compliance with laws and regulations. We included a new section on that. Then lastly, on part 3, there we, under the the requirement on direction, supervision, and review, we added an additional example related to fraud as an example of when you should tailor your direction, supervision, and review. So for this one, these parts that of course will come back again in March and in June. For now, we're really interested in the process, like in the steps that we actually look the content, so not the process we followed, but really the content. Do you agree where we said this is relevant or not relevant? Do you agree how we addressed the issue in a proportionate manner for less complex and for an audit of a less complex entity? So with that, I'm interested in the board's views on that.
Okay. Any comments? People are happy? Okay. You got a great job. And a laughter to support the great job. Okay, yes, sir.
And that's great, great to hear, to have that. That doesn't happen often. So it's this was the question that I had for you. So this then just the way forward. So in March, we'll based on with you agreeing on the process, we'll continue to work that way, and we'll present to you a first full read of the revised ISAF LCE, and then we hope to approve that approve an exposure draft of the revised ISAF LCE in June of next year. So that's the plan. Thank you very much.
Good plan. Philippe, would you like to say anything?
Thank you. Congratulations to the team, because the PIOB has really appreciated this new form of presentation and documentation with the details, and notably the way the public interest issues are taken into account. And in terms of clarity and transparency, I think it's a very, very precise. Congratulations for that.
Resounding success. That's great. Okay, so let's now turn to the maintenance approach and the project proposal. We're going to break these up because I've been forewarned. We may have differentiated approaches from the board on either. So why don't we deal with the maintenance approach first, or Jasper, even you could explain what you've done on both first, and then we'll break them up as we get to approval.
Yeah, I'm happy to start with the approach as well, Tom, if you prefer that. Yeah, I think just keeping it at a high level, for the approach, the main change that we've made was on the purpose. I think there were several comments from the board. Also, the SMPAG had comments on the purpose. So we're now not only focusing it on proportionality. We split it up. We had now 2 bullets, and we also included a bullet on the relevance of the issue. So this is aligned with also how we're actually doing it in practice, as you've seen in agenda item 12. So it's now fully aligned. We deleted the wording to the greatest extent possible, given the comments around that some SMPAG and others were not comfortable with that wording. So we've taken that out. The other thing that we have done that will trigger quite a few changes throughout this approach statement, but also the project proposal, is that we now align the wording throughout. So you'll see throughout these documents changes to align with the wording in the purpose. Then we added a header above paragraph 8 to put more emphasis on stakeholder engagement, given a comment at the board table. And we also added a new paragraph 9, which gives there's the possibility of also getting feedback through public consultations. So we've done that, and those I think are the main changes, Tom, to this approach statement.
Okay. Any comments on the changes or in general on the approach statement? Okay, Nancy?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for making those changes. It certainly addressed comments that I've made. Just one maybe lingering thought in terms of one of the changes that you did make, the currently numbered paragraph 16. So the comment was, why put extra emphasis on the team is primarily or solely responsible? So I noticed the word solely is still in there in the revised paragraph and wonder whether you really need that. I mean, the team is responsible. And then board members are advisory. Thank you.
I think we can remove that, right? Okay, people are happy with the removal of solely. No one solely in anything in this world. Okay. So what I propose to do is, with that one edit of removal of solely, approve the proposed approach for the maintenance of the LC standard. By show of hands, could I get votes in support of the proposed approach? Okay, let it be known that I was looking at the corner. So 17 votes in favor. Okay, is there a dissent? Which now leads us to asking Ado to put on the record his dissent.
Yes, thank you, Tom. And well, it shouldn't be a surprise because I've voiced it over the last two board meetings as well. I disagree with the approach. Whilst effectiveness and efficiency can be argued, the critical aspect of my disagreement with the approach is the time lag, which runs the risk of this standard not having the same fundamental concepts that are in an audit for LCE. So theoretically, there is a risk that a ISA for LCE versus a ISA audit performed on a proportional basis could end up in a different outcome. And that is something, just as a principle, I disagree with. I appreciate the risk, but it's a point of principle. It also, and I think we're doing the ISA for LC discredit by giving it a sense of, well, it is not the full standard, but it's okay for the ISA for LC not to have these concepts embedded yet. So that's why I disagree with the approach statement. But I fully appreciate and accept the board's approval of the approach. And having said that, we'll take it forward from here. Thank you.
Seems like there's a lot of construction going on outside behind us right now. Okay, thank you, Ado. So that is approved. Well done. Let's turn to the project proposal now.
Thank you, Tom. And in the project proposal, even fewer changes. Here we made changes as well to align with the purpose of the approach statement. The other thing that we've added is in the appendix. Given the discussion that we had here on Monday, we added that these appendices are included for ease of reference, to make it clear for stakeholders why these are there.
Okay, are we happy to vote on the project proposal? Okay, could I get the votes in approval of the project proposal as amended? Let it be noted that we had all 16 votes of the board for the project proposal. And I may have gotten the number wrong in the past because I think we were still a board of 18. The last vote was 15-1. So maybe I have to get with 2025. So really just great job to the team and well done, and a round of applause here. So Billy, I'm to turn it over to you to the next steps.
Yeah, so Tom, the next steps are fairly straightforward. We will put the final approved project proposal on both the meeting website meeting webpage as we normally do, as well as the project webpage. And then the work has already started, so we will just continue.
Great. Okay. Dan's already at the table. We're going to turn to the post-implementation. Oh, wait, before I do that, Philippe, I should have called on any observations from you.
No observation, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. Dan, over to you for 540. Oh, Isabel, over to you for 540.
Sorry, I just need to switch my slide.
We have you engaged in way too much right now.
Still fast. Okay, so we do have some updates to just summarize at the table. You would have that was shared with you yesterday evening. So just want to walk through the significant ones. There are others, more editorial comments that I'm not going to talk to, but the first significant comment that we have discussed is, or that we have processed, is we took out the portion about the request for stakeholder from the section 1, and we put it up front in the box, just to be clear that I was kind of just about the survey and not really the project itself. So we differentiated that. We also, as agreed at the board on Monday, updated the scale that we used throughout the survey for 4-point scale. So that was processed in that version that you've seen. Under the first section, so the background and purpose, we streamline a bit of the information that we had there, just to focus on really this survey and not all the other targeted outreach that we are planning to do, but people can refer to it in the plan that is posted online. So really just for readability. On the overall section, so section 3, what we've done is we added a question to ask about the usefulness of the non-authoritative guidance. And then in section 4 about the benefits, revise the list concern about the differentiation on certain benefits that we were asking. So we streamlined it a bit. Section 5A, so the perceived challenges and issues, that's where we had a bit more changes. So the first one is we added a different question on the root causes, because that's really important for the board to understand what is causing those challenges. And also we clarified the question on the suggestion to really focus on what the IAASB can do about those challenges. So not be too broad, but really focusing on what's in the remit of the board. We also included the concept of uncertainty and complexity in 2 of the questions. So under the risk assessment and the responses through the risk, because we thought that that's where we wanted more information if those challenges are related to more high degree level of uncertainty or a high degree of complexity estimates, or vice versa. So those are the main changes in that section. And the last big change that you would have seen is in the last section of the survey, when we ask questions to the users of the financial statements. As discussed on Monday, we heard the board asking to be more focused on what users are seeing. So really focusing on the disclosures and the report. And then we added also 2 statements that we thought that may be good to have input if certain users have access to that information. If not, they can always choose to say no response. But we thought if we could get a little bit of input there, that would be good. So that's why we included 2 additional statements in there. In the session this morning, the consultation session, we did have a couple of comments, and I wanted to bring it to the board just in case we want to do those changes. So if in the statement B of those for the financials, the users of financial statement. So the question 31B, we do ask about the communication in the auditor's report, and then we say when applicable, the key audit matters related to accounting estimate. And there was some concern with the word when applicable. So we thought that maybe we could bring it to the table now and see if any other board members had issues with the when applicable, or if we can remove it, or we leave it like that. That's maybe one question that we could clarify now. 31B.
Page 20.
On the last page of the survey, yeah. There was some concern because any communication with the auditor's report would be when applicable, because there's nothing in the report specifically for accounting estimates. So even if you have an emphasis of matter or other matter, like anything in the report is when applicable. So why are we just saying when applicable for key audit matters? That was kind of the concern.
It's fine to remove it, but it's also fine to keep it in my mind. EG suggests it's such as, but remove it.
Maybe one of the other reasons we added when applicable was because key audit matters are not required to be communicated in all cases. So it's only for certain types of entities that they're required. So we were trying to build that in there, that the example still holds, that it's the communication of key audit matters, but only when it's applicable. We kind of had the same discussion, Tom, this morning, and the project team came to the same conclusion that we could either live with it or without it. So it was just a board decision.
People okay to take it out? Yeah. Wendy?
I was just going to support taking it out.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom. So apology for not showing up in the green room, but just a question about the fix on the root cause. So I'm in paragraph 12A and it's the same wording for 15A. So in looking at this again, I think what we want is to try to understand the root cause, but 12A seems to be very leading in terms of going right to the fact that there could be problems and clarity and all that with either the requirements or the application material. So I would prefer 12A more to lead to what do you think are the causes of some of these observations that you've seen, then could then say, well, if it's something that we can do, what would that be? Whether it's standard setting and so on and so forth. So it's still there in terms of asking for their input on what kind of intervention IAASB could and should take. But 12A would focus more on why don't you tell us what the cause are? Because otherwise we're taking them right to issues with standard material.
Josephine?
So sorry, Nancy. I've been on side with you all week, but on this, I would disagree. I think it's really important with this standard in particular that we're very clear that we want to understand issues with the standard, the principles, the requirements, and the application material, because so much of what we hear is about performance, whether it be lack of training, lack of application of the standards correctly within the organization, whatever that might be. And so I was really pleased to see this, and I specifically asked for us to emphasize this in the survey. So if we make it high level and root cause, then we're back to where we started. We're not really making sure that the person replying to the survey is really focused on, is this actually a standard setting issue?
So I guess what you said, I think makes sense to me, and I think we could try to do that. But is it possible in 12A then first ask for what's the cause, and then more specifically ask about by the standards or the application material? In other words, leave room for people to say, if some of these observations are something else, is not something that we need to deal with. Would that be workable?
As long as we're extremely clear that we want to understand what the issues are with the standards and not what the issues are within training or etc., that's fine.
I guess I'm a little confused now. Doesn't 12 get to some of it? And then we try to force people to specify in how it relates to the standards. So I guess first of all, I need absolute clarity because we're voting on this. So if we're gonna make a suggestion that's on the record, we need to know what we're gonna change it to. But I thought the logic was, tell us what issues exist. Tell us how it relates to the standards themselves or any guidance. Tell us what you think we should do about it if it relates to the standards itself. Is that, you don't read it that way?
I do, just that we're not like, because them to articulate, observe on challenges. What are some of these challenges? And then the cause for that may or may not be something that we need to do with respect to standards or the requirements or application material. So it's just to leave room for that and not to dilute the point that Joseph specific on how the standards are not actually serving them well, or that what additional application material might be needed. So I think the essence of that is there, just that we are not allowing for them to come forward and say, think through and say, well, what are the causes? And in that thinking, it actually helped them articulate how are the issues, arising from a requirement or an application material. So it's just my thought process to think that we're guiding them right away to standards and application material that I thought maybe we could reflect on.
I guess though, maybe I'm missing something, and maybe you could provide some clarity. But I thought 12 does ask for more generally what it's supposed to do. So you have to read all three of them together. But Ada, maybe I'm missing something.
Yeah, happy to give my perspective. I'm with you, Tom. So in 12, we ask, what are the issues and the challenges? Broad brush. Then 12A says, and what are the issues that we need to address in standard setting? Or what are the issues related to standard setting? So I think we have that filter already in. We ask about all, and now we want to go into the depth on the issues that relate to standard setting. So I think the concept, so I agree with what you want, because I think that's important, but I think that's exactly how I read 12 and 12A.
And I guess if the room reads it that way, I think we're fine. So basically, you said the filter's already there. You allow them to articulate various challenges and what have you. And in the thinking through process to articulate what might be specific to requirements and AM, they've already done that filter. And to Josephine's point, we don't really need to understand if the causes are something else like training or whatever else.
Dan?
No, I was just going to echo what the way Ado had summarized it. That was the intent, that paragraph 12 was fairly open-ended and can describe in whatever level of detail the challenges that were experienced. And 12A and 13 were intended to go together to address to home in on matters that this board actually can address in some way, something related to the standard. And the other point is we had started with a broader question on root causes, but the board gave clear input on earlier in the week that it should be focused on what could be addressed related to the standard. The other point is if it is something that's not related to the standard itself, if it's training, if it's performance, there's really nothing that this board can do to address that. Maybe interesting to know that, and we think that will come out anyway as part of question 12 or as part of any targeted outreach that might be done.
Okay, any other comments on this or any other suggestions? Mikiko, sorry.
No, thank you. Can I come back to the audit report one that is
Yeah.
said? Yes, or B. Yes, yeah, I support and we can change. So what you said is we just take when applicable out, maybe? Yeah, that'll be fine, yeah, because, yeah. So, and my concern is really small thing, but yeah, because we like to have their answers more relevant. So we like to answer, we don't like to have all the audit report concern from them. So maybe you're included the related to accounting estimate under key audit matters only, but this is in a parenthesis. So maybe, and so it, to be clear, to have the answers is related to only to audit accounting estimate. Maybe we should say that outside of the parentheses. So that is my question. And also one thing on D, you said since ISO 540 was issued is only in D, but maybe it is for all. So maybe we can have that on in 32 or somewhere. So it just, my comment is just to have the relevant comment. So it should be only on the estimate and only after 540 is issued. So maybe investors are not very informative about what we are doing. It should be very clear. So that is my comment. Thank you.
Okay.
Makiko, just to follow up on your comment, I wasn't sure if you were suggesting a change here. We're looking at point B. We really did think that since this is focused on 540 and estimates, that really what is most applicable or relevant would be any communications about key audit matters specifically related to accounting estimates. There could be other key audit matters there, and certainly that would be of interest to users, but not really of relevance to what we're trying to do with the survey. So I maybe misunderstood your point on that one.
No, I'm with you. So
Okay.
yeah, maybe that might be English matter because what you said in the matters, that means accounting estimate, that we find. So I would like to have the comment only on the estimate. So that is yeah. So if that is clear for you, that's fine. Yeah, thank you.
And maybe also to follow up on your point on point D, was there a suggestion there for a possible change? The intent of this was to say in the past 5 years or so since the standard has been effective, have you seen either greater attention, greater consistency in the way auditors are approaching the audit of accounting estimates? So maybe again, just to be so we're clear in terms of what your comment or concern was.
Yeah, if that is clear from your perspective, that'll be fine. But yeah, my point is that yeah, we need to be very careful for group F about how to say confusion. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. And just generally on these points on users, I think as the board discussed earlier in the week, some users may not be in a position to respond. They may just say no response. We are planning targeted outreach with users anyway, and we'll gather additional input that way. But we thought there was no harm in putting these statements out there just to see if we could get some input.
I totally agree with you. That is what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Are we to the moment of approval? Okay. Who approves the post-implementation?
Sorry.
Oh,
So
Uh-huh.
one more comment on the, yeah, for the public record, I want to ask, I think when we had we discussed this, maybe some suggestion was raised from board members about the to ask industry or maybe the theme, which theme of the estimate related. So, but I think of course people can answer with their industry or theme. Is it about impairment, etc.? So within the free answer, I believe. So that might be fine. But can you share the rationale or the background you matter.
Yeah, thank you, Makiko. The team did discuss that and concluded that it probably would be, or maybe difficult to ask about industry for a couple of reasons. One is we already have the demographic information on preparers, for example, or other organizations. So we should be able to tell if it's a financial services related entity or some other industry. And we can kind of narrow it down and that way when we look at responses. And the other relevant piece is for auditors that are responding to the survey. Certainly there are different, there may be different levels of challenges for complex estimates related to insurance reserves or to in banks, oil and gas reserves, contract accounting, those types of things. There was really no good way of targeting the specific industry for those respondents. So we think we will have the raw data, the information to be able to get some inclination as to whether the challenges relate to certain types of estimates for certain industries.
Thank you, Don.
Okay. Are we ready to vote on the proposed post-implementation review survey? Super. Okay. So we're gonna vote on that right now. All those who want to approve the consultation survey, raise their hand. No, we've already done the improvement section of it. Trust me. It's been improved. Okay, all 16 members of the board have voted for it. Congratulations to Dan, Isabel, and the board for doing it. Okay, Billy, notwithstanding all of the discussions about timelines yesterday, tell us what the next steps are.
Yeah, so very quickly, again, we'll make the final clean version of the survey available on the web, on the meetings page. We were in any case intending, and maybe I'll go back to the strategy and work plan as well. Although it's going to be, although the mechanism for stakeholders to provide their input will be the survey, we were always intending to also make available the PDF version and Word versions of the documents, because we understand stakeholders may take that away, go and do their own outreach, collate the information, and then submit it via the survey. So at least the approved text will be available. The same with the strategy and work plan. That text is available. So based on the discussion yesterday, if firms want to get started on that, they've got all the information available to start looking at that. We will then work to put this into an online survey, and then just in timing, this thing will probably go out early in February. It will go live and we think it will be closer to 120 days. I think we've got some indication that people may need a little bit longer on that. But we will, Ken and I will still also just look at the overall puzzle of all of this. But I think this will go out at the beginning of February.
The spreadsheet lives. Yeah. So just a note, we're to the end of the official portion of our business today, but we do have one thing to do that we really want to do in the public before we end, and that is to recognize Josephine Jackson's immense contributions to this board, that little did we know went all the way back to 2004, when she was a fill-in TA at one point to whoever Mr. Ashton was. But we don't know. But, Josephine, it's going to be really hard to replace you at the board table. I say at the board table because I don't think people ever leave, and I'm sure Josephine's always going to be involved. But just note that I think about legacies, about leaving a place better than when you found it. And you could certainly be sure that you have had that contribution to this board. When you think of all the projects that you've been along the way for and contributed to, and this is obviously as a TA for a number of years to our friend Susan Jones, supporting the work of Diane Hillier, obviously TA to Marek, and working with him, you know, NOCLAR 315, 600, ISQM1, ISO 220, and then as a member, like you think about the major standards we have gotten done on 600, QM1, 220, going concern, fraud. Geez, we put you on a lot of stuff to do. Listed entity and pies. And obviously 5,000. And you know, you could look back on that, and that will, amongst many other things, be an enormous legacy because when you think about Josephine and you want to get stuff done, we always joke, Josephine gets stuff done. And we probably didn't use the word stuff when we said it, but Josephine raised her hand, willing to take the 5,000 job up. Then I called her up and said, I have a great idea. Let's do this 3 months faster. And she said, what? And I think your task force was actually meeting at the time. And she's like, how am I going to sell it to that? Just say I want it. And she managed to get that through, but a huge legacy at this quality of global standards. So I think the whole profession should be in huge debt for that. The things you probably don't know behind the scene is when you're vice chair, part of your job is to keep the chair calm, which is probably too much of a burden, and in this country would be a violation of the Eighth Amendment of cruel and unusual punishment. But I've always appreciated your willingness to speak, to provide counsel, and most importantly, to be a good friend. So we're really thrilled to have had you as a colleague and as a friend. And we have a small token on behalf of the board, which clearly isn't enough probably, but you know, we're not for profit, so it is enough. And let me try to get it out.
Not what for champagne.
No, it's a very small bottle, if that. But thank you, Jessica.
Okay. Oh. Golly, yes, hard to believe, 2004. And one of the things that's interesting about that was the item on the agenda then was interim reviews. We'd just come back from exposure with, I think, only 33 responses, which is far lower than the kind of responses we get today. Before I begin, when pulling together some ideas for my very, very brief closing, I did take into account advice that I had received. First, keep it really short, not talk about myself, and definitely bring theme, as is actually tradition in this board to bring themes. So some of you will be around with the Viking climbing up the hill and so forth, and the golf theme. So I decided to choose a theme that reflects the fact I've traveled across nearly all of the oceans on this planet on behalf of my trips of the IAASB over 2 decades. Hopefully my theme is not too subtle, and hopefully I make it through. I have my tissues. So with that, thank you. Thank you, Tom, for those incredibly kind and flattering words. And thank you also for your outstanding leadership. It really has been a true privilege to serve alongside you. I am profoundly grateful. You've steered this board, getting there, with clarity, wisdom, and a steadiness of hand that's kept us on course through sometimes really unpredictable seas. And you've managed that rare balance of conviction and collaboration, encouraging open debate while always keeping us aligned on our true direction. And it's no small task to guide a ship and her crew like the IAASB through the crosswinds of global change, rapid innovation. Thank you, Charlotte. Rapid innovation and stakeholder expectations. But under your admiralty, we've not only stayed afloat, we've gained real momentum. And to Philly, thank you for building a great staff team and being our anchor in the complexity of standard setting. Your mastery of the details, your unflappable calm at the meetings, and your ability to translate dense technical discussions have been indispensable to the board and staff. I sometimes think of you as our ship's navigator, quietly charting the safest and smartest routes through the fog and ensuring that the rest of us don't run aground. And of course, to all the IAASB staff, here, past and present, you are the wind in our sails. I wish I could spend time to thank you all individually here, but time and Tom's schedule won't allow it. But I do want to single out some unsung heroes. So Megan Light, Megan Hartman, Michelle, Taylor, Jansa, and Velvet. And of course, I'd like to do a special call out for Dorothea Forey, who's looked after me for 2 decades. Together, your professionalism, patience, and ability to make the impossible seem routine never cease to impress me. I also want to mention my bosses, past and present, who gave me the opportunity to become a technical advisor. Already mentioned Susan Jones, Marek Grabowski, and also to Marek and Mark, who supported me in my application to become a board member. I'm truly grateful to you all and to the FRC for your unwavering support. And Tom, thank you for the confidence you placed in me when entrusting me with the vice chair role. It really has been an honor to serve in that capacity and contribute to the board's mission. Over the years, I've had the enormous honor of serving alongside many remarkable board members and technical advisors, and with a special call out for the Supergirls, Dan, Jamie, and Wolf. Just note that the Supergirls pause, Dan, Jamie, and Wolf. I've met some incredibly thoughtful, principled, and passionate individuals who bring their expertise and commitment to the table. We've shared intense discussions, differing perspectives, moments of spirited disagreement, and most importantly, humor, but always in pursuit of a shared goal. And that goal, the board's ability to stay firmly anchored in the public interest, has enabled us to deliver outcomes that enhance the credibility and coherence of assurance worldwide. The cumulative impact of that work has been to underpin confidence in reporting and contribute to the smooth functioning of global capital markets. Change, of course, has always been part of our journeys and, of course, is inevitable. The tide that never stops turning. And your challenge is to continue to embrace it, to adjust the sails when needed, and to ensure you remain agile enough to move with purpose and not drift with circumstance. That's what will keep the IAASB strong, relevant, and respected. And on keeping the IAASB strong, relevant, and respected, I want to say how delighted I am that Ado will be stepping into the role of vice chair. Having worked closely with Ado, I've seen firsthand the depth of his insight and his steady judgment, and importantly, his great humor when stormy weather persists. I know the board will benefit enormously from his leadership. I also look forward to seeing James Ferris join the board and the great things he will accomplish in his new chapter. Before I close, I must thank my family, my husband and my daughters. I am so deeply grateful to them for allowing me to pursue this IAAS dream, for their patience, encouragement, and understanding through the many absences, early mornings and late nights. They've been keeping everything steady at home so I could help steer the IAASB ship. I couldn't have done it without their support. Yay, go. As I come to the end of my watch, I do so with enormous gratitude for the friendships, the lessons, the laughter along the way. Humor is a big theme here, everybody. Thank you for letting me share this voyage with you. I have no doubt that under this leadership and with this remarkable crew, the IAASB will continue to navigate confidently toward that guiding star, no matter how the tides may shift. Finally, for anyone involved in the IAASB, including future board members, know that you're part of an organization with a clear mission, a strong sense of purpose, and exceptional people. So embrace the experience. It's truly rewarding. For me, it's been an absolute blast. Thank you.
Thank you, Josephine. sort of after that, it's a little hard to do the mundane task to close out a meeting. Such as the ISA 500 series project team will meet in the green room after this meeting. So, well done. Great. That's awesome, huh? Not only that, then you get to another level. Draft minutes will be distributed to the board for comment in due course and will be posted for approval at the March meeting. Just so you know about our upcoming meetings, there will be no whole video conference on February 4th. So if you have that in your calendar, please remove it or find out that you have free time afterwards. The next quarterly IAASB meeting will be a 4-day meeting here, March 16th to March 19th in New York, mostly in this room, except for the 17th. We will venture elsewhere in New York, though. Posting for those papers will likely begin the week of, will begin February 23rd, and we should be all posted by the 28th of February. Real thanks, Josephine shouted out to the team who deserves thanks for making this all happen this week. It's been a great week, and thank you. But thank you to the whole tech who've done a fantastic job preparing the papers, huge amount of engagement. I think this is epitomizes what we talk about, a staff-driven model, because it's not just writing papers, it's all the outreach, the engagement, the work with the board members and our stakeholders. So great job to all of you. And so wanted just to note that. Thank you, Philly, for keeping me also under control and for shepherding us too. We're no longer, we used to talk about an army, but now I think we're a Navy. Thanks to Joseph. Thanks for that. And before I close out, I just want to turn to Philippe for any observations from the PIOB on this week's meetings.
Thank you, Tom. Congratulations, Josephine, first, for this year, for your engagement, implication, energy that I could feel. And I think you were a significant part of the, success in the delivery of the new standards and the revisions. Thank you, Tom, and all the team and the board members for this meeting, which was really fruitful, I think, successful, sometimes very detailed, sometimes opening to silence and considerations. Interesting to have the big picture, to keep the big picture on what is at stake in the standards. And I was very pleased really to attend this meeting with you, and I wish you a happy holiday and really very, very nice Christmas in family with love and warm light. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe. It's been great to have you part of this session. With that, I think I really just want to thank those in the room and on YouTube and all those who participate in our processes and care. I say this often, that this is a privilege that we get to set standards that guide the work of the profession around the world. And, it's like we ultimately strive for the respect of those who use our standards, and our standards would not be the same without our stakeholders who input and care so much about our work. So thank you for paying such a close attention. And with that, I bring this meeting to close. I'll ask Michelle, team to end the live stream, and we'll stay in here for a few more moments afterwards.